The College of New Jersey is a prestigious four-year public institution that was founded in 1855 as the New Jersey State Normal School for Developing Teachers. In later years, it underwent several name changes. Previously known as Trenton State College, it is now called the College of New Jersey, or TC&J. TC&J has established a reputation as a community of diverse learners in an environment known for rigorous academics, endless extracurriculars, and a supportive culture, all on a campus that feels like home. As indicated on TC&J's construction website, in the first 2 decades of the 21st century, more than $450 million in ongoing new facilities construction and renovations has ensured that TC&J students continue to have an environment that not only meets their academic, athletic, social, and living needs, but extends their reach, resulting in higher scholarship, better health and fitness, closer community, and greater comfort. It seems like all of the buildings on and around campus have been renovated and upgraded for the benefit of its students and surrounding community. That is, all of the buildings except for one.
The William Green Farmhouse.
The William Greenhouse.
The William Greenhouse.
The Green family.
William Green Farmhouse.
Built in the early 1700s, the William Greenhouse would become a landmark in the growing city of Trenton. William Green, who moved to Trenton at the beginning of the 18th century, orchestrated the construction of the farmhouse that still stands on the campus of TC&J. The house visibly juxtaposes the aesthetic of the rest of the campus and stands out from the rest of the buildings. The house is primarily known for its rich architecture and connection to the Revolutionary War, but recently information that connects the house to evidence of slavery has been discovered. For some reason, this information is not widely known or acknowledged on campus and within the community. As it decays, the untold histories of the people that have lived and suffered there will die with the house. Our mission is to investigate the William Green plantation in order to discover the truth behind its existence, who it has impacted, what is known about it, why it hasn't been addressed, and what action needs to be taken to provide reparations and empowerment for people that have suffered from oppression.
Our first step along this journey of investigation is to determine what the general campus population knows about this house. So we are going around campus and talking to our fellow peers and staff and asking them if they have heard about the house, and if so, what they know about it.
Have you ever heard of the William Greenhouse?
I have actually heard of it, but I've not actually visited it.
Do you know anything about it? I know she did it in 3 years.
Not specifically, no.
Have you ever heard of William Greenhouse?
No.
Have you heard of it first?
Yes.
Yes.
In our class, I think. In our
Yes.
WGS class. Yeah.
Is there anything you want to share about it? Anything you know?
That it could have been a burial ground and that it could have had slaves. What else did we learn? I'm not sure.
I've heard of it, but I don't pay attention to it.
And
I've been here 40 years and never really paid no attention to the house back then. So it's been hush-hush for a good while there, if that's the case. I mean, for its history. I'm going to have to pay attention to it when I leave it at that. Oh, look at that. That's the same house?
Yeah.
So nobody goes in there at all? Not even the grounds people? Oh, I'm gonna have to pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Oh, whoa. Let me see this again.
Yeah.
Our next step includes researching and learning about the house and its history, and to help us with this, we will be meeting with and talking to Ann MacArthur, the president of the Friends of the William Greenhouse. The Friends are a public group of citizens from the surrounding community that has worked in partnership with TC&J to preserve the house. Now, the group continues to strive towards raising awareness and funds for the preservation of the house.
This is probably its 300th day this year. There's some debate about when it was built, but at the newest portion of the building, built around 1780. And in that back corner over there, when the William Green I bought the land in 1712 from Thomas Cox, he set up a little cabin a 1.5-story structure on this corner here. And if you're inside the building in the oldest section, what's now the oldest section, the oldest brick section, you can see the roof line of that cabin on the second floor. So that's where they lived until they actually built the house. William Green I died in 1722 when he divided up his land among his children. And William Green II got this part of the land, and kind of right over there, his son Joseph got land, and they both built houses, brick houses, with some Flemish bond brickwork at about the same time, which we think was around 1722, when their father died and actually gave them the land. And some people date it to around 1730. Some people date it earlier to 1717, but the first section, the cabin, was built in 1712, and it probably is the rest of it around 1720s, 1730s. And when you look at the oldest section in the front, it has Flemish bond brickwork, which is a very fancy kind of brickwork, actually kind of associated with the Quakers or Friends. And this is one of the best examples in New Jersey, because that tradition is actually further south of New Jersey. So it shows enough wealth to go into that sort of detail with the building. And so when they built that, this became the first brick building in Ewing Township. The house, of course, belonged to the Green family, and they sold it to the college, I believe, around 1960. And it wasn't in the deed, but the family thought the college was going to preserve the building. And they did have people live in it for a while, including the football coach and so forth. And then at some point, probably in the late 60s, they stopped having anyone live there. So then it quickly kind of went downhill after that. He came from England, and he came to this country right around 1700. And he came in through Philadelphia. And then he decided to go back to England. And he couldn't find a ship. So he ended up going to New York City, still looking for a ship, and staying out on Long Island while he was waiting for a boat going back to England. While he was there, he met Joanna Reeder, and he married her. And then William and Joanna, and some of Joanna's family, the Reeder family, and there are many Reeder buildings in this town as well, moved to this area right around 1700. So that's how they ended up coming here, and he became a prominent citizen, well known as a businessman. He became a judge, and he had 11 children, so a lot of influence. The Green family was very important in Ewing history. At the time they came here, there really wasn't much of a Ewing. They became very involved in setting up the Ewing Presbyterian Church, which is also over 300 years old. And they're really a part of the fabric of the township. They intermarried with all the other settlers and so forth. And so I'd like to see it preserved as a key piece of New Jersey history and American history, the whole early farming aspect of this country, tied into national history with the two William Green III, who lived here, and his cousin, William Green, who lived down the road. And they were both served in the militia. They served, the whole militia was called out at the Battle of Trenton. William Green, we don't know if it was this William or his cousin, acted as a scout for Washington. We think we have some evidence that the farm was used for the light cavalry, Washington's light cavalry to bivouac in. That's an important part of history.
Anne shared a lot of information about the history of the house through her knowledge about the Greens and the journey that the house has taken to get to its present state. Now, what we are looking for is what historical artifacts have been recovered from the property and what do we know about the present day state of the house as it sits on TCNJ's campus. To understand more about this and how it ties into the larger histories, we must go to the source. While the William Green House proper has stood for over 2 centuries, additions were made in the following decades and centuries, adding 3 more parts to the house. Recent research regarding the house and its occupiers has been underway since 2015, when Dr. George Weeder, along with Jason Hammer, a former student, and other student researchers conducted excavation at each corners of the house, finding ceramics, tobacco pipe stems, and more.
So starting freshman year, I started in more of the excavation part of the project. I participated in the spring of 2019 with the spring excavation that was at the house and working with some of the artifacts there. And at that point, we started doing a little more like the independent research side of things. So I started going into the archives more and looking at the archival research in connection with the artifactual research. So it's really cool to kind of see both of those come together because you're seeing 2 different sides of the same story. So you're seeing the physical things that they used, you're seeing the ceramics and the nails that were used and the window glass. And then you're also seeing the story of the family themselves. So you have their lives and their names and their children, and it's been really cool to put both of these 2 stories together to make a larger understanding of the bigger picture.
However, issues regarding the house's safety have kept archaeologists from entering the house since 2019.
I'm Ricky Masson. I'm the Landmarks Commission chairperson in Montgomery Township, which is in Somerset County, not too far from here. I am also the township liaison to the Delaware and Raritan State Park Canal Commission, and that's preservation volunteer appointed roles in my municipality. For Preservation New Jersey, the statewide nonprofit, which is involved in historic preservation of properties across New Jersey, we are looking to update the listing and present news on the preservation front for our 10 most endangered list. This building behind me was part of that list in 2015 and was largely responsible for having that. So that's the 10 most properties in the state of New Jersey that are under a lot of concern over what their future is, whether they would still be here or not. Is there an adaptive reuse? Is there a way to save them and keep them in use to the community? You're at a college campus. Could the college come up with a way to fix what's needing to be fixed so that the structure remains historically significant, which would be its exterior primarily, and then depending on interior conditions of the building. So I would encourage that type of work to go on. The college would have to spend some money or to have professionals look at this, engineers especially. And I would think that we're in a very good position to have that continue. The building is here. It's still standing. Anne has told me about an event in 2019, so it's not very long ago, just pre-pandemic, that it was in use in some fashion. For 3 years, you haven't been able to go inside the building. Well, there's reasons for that. They want to be safe. They want to make sure no one is injured. A very big part of preservation work is considering the value of the historic fabric of the building and what that means to the local region it's in. So as far as families and as far as legacies of the township, as legacies of Mercer County, and legacies of New Jersey altogether, this is a very significant building.
In 2020, President Catherine A. Foster of TCNJ made a campus-wide announcement that evidence of slavery had been found at the William Green House, which initially led to public outrage and a petition was formed to tear down the house. A former student, Kristen Bridges, uncovered documents that connected one of the owners of the house, William W. Green, and his wife, Phoebe Green, to use of indentured servitude on the plantation. This discovery led to finding the names of one, Eliza Reasoner, and another unnamed boy. Our group member, Nick Wekselblatt, joined Dr. Leader with this research and participated in a discovery of evidence of slavery at the house, an enslaved man named Harry, whose slaveholder was the same William W. Green. And now, Nick will offer us further insight into the discoveries of the lives of Harry and Eliza.
So, as part of my research working with Dr. Leader on the William Green house and plantation, I was on the archival side of evidence trying to find different documents that may have some form of evidence to connect the house and its inhabitants to being slaveholders. What I found was a manumission document that tied William W. Green to being a slaveholder as he was freeing a man named Harry, who was his enslaved laborer. It's important to note that on this manumission document, it is dated to May 2nd, 1808. This is important because in the Trenton Federalist, William W. Green on the same day would run a runaway advertisement of his same enslaved person, Harry. Something must have happened at this point, and Harry, who was soon to be freed, ran away from the Green plantation. This is the same William W. Green that previous research by Kristen Bridges, a former student, she found evidence of indentured servants, one being Eliza Reasoner and another being unnamed. This makes the total occupants of enslaved people possibly at 3, if not more, at the Green plantation at some point. And slavery in New Jersey is a very complex issue. It's really hard to grasp exactly what the status was of Harry and Eliza. By the mid-1800s, the idea of a slave or an indentured servant became very vague and blurred in New Jersey as the legal definitions started to become changed, with New Jersey legally banning the word slave as a legal term in 1846. This, however, did not stop slavery in the state, and you can see further evidence of slaves being called either slaves for a term or indentures for life, instead of the legal term as slave. So the histories of Harry and Eliza are extremely important to understand the complex nature of slavery in New Jersey, and furthermore, the complex nature of slavery within the colonial and later new formed country of the United States.
To help us get a better understanding of the racial and cultural context of this history and how it impacts students of color and people within the community, we will be meeting with Dr. Piper Williams, TCNJ's Department Chair and Professor of African American Studies and English.
I'm Dr. Piper Kendricks Williams. I'm a full professor and I'm Chair of African American Studies. As Chair of African American Studies, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on me. Our department is so small. We don't get many resources, but we are in the midst of celebrating our 50th anniversary. So we're excited about what that might entail. I think I first heard about the William Green House through email. I feel like there were some emails that went to the whole college community before COVID, so I guess 4 or 5 years ago. I know within the school of HSS, George Leader started a community of faculty who were like the William Green Working Group. I wasn't part of that. I knew it was an old house. I knew there were questions about whether or not enslaved people had been there. I think there might have been a protest about it. A house that had slaves on campus were my big takeaways. No one knows about slavery in the North. We're always taught slavery. When did you guys hear about slavery? What do the textbooks do with slavery? In the South, in the 19th century, on a cotton plantation, somewhere. So Northern slavery isn't really taught because we're taught about abolition, we're taught about the people in the North being good. So I don't think that most people are aware, but I think New Jersey sometimes felt more Southern than Northern. I teach a documentary that talks about a slave that ran away from Monmouth County, New Jersey to get into the Revolutionary War. And I know that always surprises my students because they don't think of like enslaved people and New Jersey like in the same sentence. So something like the William Green House, I think, offers an opportunity to really talk about the fact that slavery occupied all of the 13 colonies, central to all of our history. Well, I think because we're not taught a lot about the economic and social and cultural things that were created out of slavery, we can't understand current things. People don't understand why it's important to say Black Lives Matter. But if you're an African American person descended from enslaved people, you know that like your ancestors have been saying Black Lives Matter since the first time they breathed on the continent. That it's an articulation of our humanity that's been denied by white supremacy. So I think that impacts of slavery and the other things that came after slavery, Jim Crow, lynching, oppression, really have an impact on so many things. But we don't know about it, so we can't make sense. We don't understand why Black people's votes are being suppressed. We can't understand why people are freaking out on what they call critical race theory. We don't understand anything because we haven't been taught. And then this college has a lot to do because it's a public school, it's in New Jersey, a very demographically diverse state. It's also primarily white. It's like 6% Black or African American people, which is not the same. A lot of students come from places that are all white, have never had to have these conversations. So I do think that the legacy of slavery is something that we live with all the time, but we don't understand it because we've never been taught. It wouldn't matter to me if there's no evidence of an enslaved person there. Do we know what it was like to be an indentured servant? Do we know that those people were not African? Do we know that indentured servitude and in slavery at a certain point kind of meshed together? Do we know that Europeans as indentured servants and Africans as indentured servants showed that, in like the Bacon Rebellion, showed that there was a lot of common cause between indentured servants and enslaved people because they were treated brutally in similar ways? Indentured servitude is the first step to enslavement because those time periods turn into for life and inheritable. And the laws about slavery change over all the decades and all over the centuries of slavery. I think that's just the trying to like not talk about it because it doesn't have that one thing, and I don't think we know. Can we really know if it? This is the problem with, for me personally, being an African American person. I can't find my ancestors from Africa. Does that mean they didn't exist? Of course they existed because I exist. I can't find my European ancestors. Does that mean they didn't exist? No, of course they existed because I existed. For oppressed people, the absence of evidence does not mean it didn't exist. So the absence of evidence of enslaved people there, but I heard you found out, I mean, manumission, runaway ad, that's what I would say to those people. But I think people who want to say, oh, that's not there so we don't have to talk about it, or it's not significant, that's just denial. And denial is what perpetuates oppression. I think the college should be at the head of saving this house. I'm really dismayed to hear the condition of it. I hope the college does right by the house. I mean, I think if they have the will, I can't believe you can't go inside. I can't believe it's like in disarray. I think that's ridiculous. So you sparked my interest.
We reached out to former TCNJ President R. Barbara Gittenstein in an attempt to further discuss the state of the William Greenhouse and why there was no action taken to acknowledge or provide healing through some form of reparations with the house when the school found out about evidence of slavery. Unfortunately, former President Gittenstein declined our invitation and shared, "I do not have much to offer to support your investigation." For us, this highlights that there was either not much discussion going on about the William Greenhouse within the higher levels of administration, or a decision to not take action was made and then forgotten about. We also reached out to David Green, a living descendant of William Green. David Green is the founder of Hobby Lobby and currently has a net worth of $7.3 billion. We did not receive a response from David Green.
Now that we have completed extensive research and talked to people with various perspectives, we have to put together some of these pieces to determine what could be done with the house, according to professional opinions and ideas from fellow students and community members. We know that it is important that the school recognizes this historical site as an important part of TCNJ's campus. Therefore, it is vital that the history of enslavement during this house's history is not only acknowledged, but also transformed into a place of healing and empowerment for people of color on this campus and in this community. So the question becomes, what could be done about the house to bring together the history of the state, but to also recognize the history of enslavement within New Jersey and to make reparations to those who have suffered from oppression.
I'm not sure if it's a change. I think it just gives it a wider perspective to address in studying it and learning about it. And at one time, the house has been considered to be almost everything. Restored as a coffee house, as an alumni house, and Professor Leader suggested a Center of New Jersey Studies, which is my favorite. The Friends have been a lot about adaptive reuse. The college has said many times they don't have the resources or the interest in having this, a museum type of structure. So what we had envisioned is finding a good use for the building, and I think that would just bring in different experiences and perspectives, so not just colonial farming, and there, of course there's an association with the Revolutionary War with the Greens who fought in the militia at that time, but it would give you a view of daily life and what was needed to make the farm productive and the people who lived here. It makes the house more interesting. It makes it really fit into the historical record and into what was happening in America at that time. And it presents an excellent way to teach people about parts of society who aren't free white men, and it just gives it a wider perspective to study.
It shouldn't be a coffee shop. It shouldn't be torn down. I like the idea of a museum. I would love to have the documents that were found framed in there. So I think African American Studies should be part of it. I think all the departments that could contribute to it, I think, should be a part of it. I think the community should be a part of it. I think the William Green Friends should be a part of it. They should be invited to have a seat at the table that's equal to the people at the college. But I think we do need buy-in from the upper administration and the board, because that's really how decisions get made. But I wish they would defer to the experts and the archaeologists and the anthropologists and the people who are really there doing the work. But I think it should be a wide swath of people who are interested, and I think it is an interdisciplinary project that could bring people from all over campus thinking about it. Like engineers who have to think about structures. It could be relevant to business, all sorts of things. All different classes could require a unit on it. To talk about it. It could just be it could be symbolic than to talk about slavery in New Jersey. I think it would be a great opportunity not just for the conversation about the William Green, but to have all sorts of exhibits on slavery in the North. You could be a mecca for people who want to study it. It could be an amazing thing. And you'd get so many people here, I think, who are interested in it.
Naming is something that we know to be important as a representation of something. The house is currently called the William Green House, which centers the Green family but does not provide further insight towards the full extent of what we now know about the house's history. TCNJ prides itself on its efforts to create a campus that prioritizes inclusion and support for diversity, and we have seen this in the past when the school renamed the former Paul Lozier Hall. After learning about Paul Lozier's role as a segregationist, the school administration changed the name of the building to Trenton Hall, tying back into the very community that birthed this college. Similarly, should there be a name change for the William Green House?
Although William Green was not a slave owner, the first one that the house is named after, and the house at that time was called Plantation, a common name for farms at the time. The Green Friends have no problem with naming the building something else. It's just important that it be preserved and recognized as a really good example of colonial farm architecture in the United States. I think the Friends would be happy to see the house remain standing, regardless of what it's called. We ourselves have always called it the farmhouse. which to me is completely appropriate. And that was its main use. It's fine to use plantation in the past, but the word has come to mean something different from its original intention of really just being a large farm. So I'd say that's off the table as far as I'm concerned. And as I said earlier, I don't think it has to be named after the Green family per se. I would actually think the college might want to name it after someone who gives them a lot of money to restore it. So that's how I feel.
Do the papers that were found have a name on it?
Yes, a few of them.
So that's an idea. I like plantation because I think it really disrupts people's understanding of slavery, especially northern slavery. So William Green Plantation, I think, should be the official name, just to get people to think slavery. But definitely the names of the people who were there, I think, should be, back to the museum, should be a part of it. But I'd love to learn about the names of the people, who maybe were enslaved there.
Harry and Eliza.
Oh. I think you have to keep the history of, the slave master there. But they should get, the biggest room.
As the William Green House sits and decays, untold histories remain forgotten. The stories of Eliza and Harry are representative of a larger pattern of people of color who have suffered and lived through oppression in New Jersey without proper acknowledgement of their pain or reparations for their descendants. TCNJ's students, staff, and community members can work together to fight against this reality and make the William Green House a location that rewrites history and makes this campus a safe place of belonging for everyone. Ultimately, it is up to the College of New Jersey and its administration to initiate this process of healing and empowerment.